Alright, what's good YouTube? Gentlemen, here back on the channel, and today we have a brand new draft analysis on the channel. We are going to be competing in the NPBA Season 6. This is going to be our third consecutive full season in the NPBA, so let's hope we can do it better than we have done the last two times, because the last two times have been a little bit rough, and that has actually also made it so we are now in the Johto division instead of the Kanto division. So if you look at like the background, you can see it's like Johto, you know, whew, beautiful. Speaking of beautiful, look at that NPBA logo. It's completely new because NPBA has started this kind of jealous war between the East and the West. And I'm just gonna say it, I'm probably on Team East. When I was younger, I was on Team West, but as I've grown older, I just kind of like the East design more, like the colors. I kind of whatever. I can dig both colors, but I feel like the design of the East is a little bit better than the West. So I'm Team East Jealous. It just is what it is. But yeah, we are back for another season. It's typical, you know, points 115. We had 16 coaches with a snake style draft format. So, you know, pick 1 to 16, 16 to 1, as you know it. We got the third pick overall, which was actually very, very nice. No, normally I don't like having a high pick that much because I prefer to pick two good mons together in like a core than getting one good mon and just waiting to see what you can get when it comes back. But this time I actually did want a high pick because we did have S-tier mons. So we have stuff like Cherum Black, Astro Ninja, Darkrai, Naganadel, stuff like that. Summer Center Crown with all of its utility and everything, I believe it was there. So this time I'm very happy about getting the third pick. It means we actually get access to one of those mons, and it's not so much because they're strong broken, it's more just because they're new, they're fun to play with, so I want to try them. But speaking of fun to play with, or kind of, we got sniped a lot. Like, typically this is not something I would highlight in a draft analysis, but holy, I got sniped a lot. I think well over half my team was not something I would have drafted at the beginning of the draft. It's stuff I picked up because we got sniped or some unforeseen circumstances happened and we just had to pick something. So yeah, team is not exactly what I thought it was going to be. I still like it. I think it's better than last season, because last season I focused a whole lot on picking up mons I just liked. I didn't care that much about the team comp and whatnot. This time around I was a little bit more aware of the team comp. It's still not great because, as I mentioned, we get sniped, so some stuff had to be picked up just out of necessity rather than team comp, you know. But yeah, so third pick, we got third picks. We get a really good mon. The first mon to go overall was Naganadel, which I completely agree with that. I think Naganadel might be the best S-tier mon, in my opinion at least. Just because when it starts to spiral out of control, there's no way to beat it. It is so good even without its like nasty plot access. Second up, Dragapult got picked, and I don't know if I would have picked. Okay, I know I personally would never have picked Dragapult, but that's because I think Dragapult is a little bit overrated. But even then, I feel like picking Dragapult second when all of these other cool mons are available is a little bit weird. Okay, it made it so we can get arguably the second best one, I would say, after Naganadel in Darkrai. So we got Pride, the Darkrai. The nickname's kind of theme for 7 hour mons is going to be the 7 Deadly Sins. And no, it's not a reference to the anime, the 7 Deadly Sins. It's more a reference to Full Metal Alchemist variants, but also just the 7 Deadly Sins as a general thing. But yeah, Pride Darkrai. Darkrai is an amazing mon, has an incredible move pool, access to Bolt Beam, so Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, gets Dark Ball, of course, Psychic, Sludge Bomb, Focus Blast, even access to Knockoff if you want to have some utility. And speaking of utility, all of its utility moves are really nice. You get access to like Disable if you want to run that, Haze, Will-O-Wisp, Trick, Toxic, Thunder Wave. It gets a lot of stuff it can do, and I'm actually very excited building with Darkrai. I've never used a Darkrai before, like ever, in anything. I don't even think I've ever caught a Darkrai in the games, maybe once. No, I did it on Legend Arceus, actually. Never mind, I did it once. Well, so I'm very excited about using Darkrai, and I'm hoping I put in work. I don't need this to be our like main killer. I just need this to be a mon that can put pressure on the opposing team, so we have other mons that can potentially sweep. And a mon that could potentially sweep can be our next one. So I really wanted a steel type for my second pick. Darkrai struggles a little bit with fairy types, even though if you do have access to Sludge Bomb, you don't necessarily hit fairy types that hard. Like a lot of fairy types, especially defensive, like Sylveon, Clefable, stuff like that. So you want to be able to push through them with a good steel type or a good poison type. I focused on getting the steel type this time around. I did also want a really good poison type, but unfortunately that was one of those we got sniped from. I will talk about that a little bit later. But the steel type I ended up picking was Scissor. So my pipe dream was Mega Scissor. I knew Mega Scissor probably wasn't going to come back to me, but I was like the pipe dream. If it came back, I was going to snatch that instantly. I wouldn't care about the points at that point. I would just take it. After that, I thought about going like Melmetal or Jirachi, but those two got picked up like right before me. Like literally the 2 picks before me were those 2 mons. And I think like halfway through the draft on the way back, I think Corviknight got picked up. I probably wouldn't have gone for Corviknight because I wanted a little bit better offensive steel type. And that's also why I ended up picking up Scissor over like Omega Aggron or something like that, because I want a steel type that can like punch through most fairy types. And Scissor with his priority bullet punch means that even though a fairy type would outspeed it like Mega Gardevoir or something, it still most likely threatens them out, which is what we wanted our steel type to do. Other than that, Scissor is just a really good mon. Like U-turn, knockoff utility, defog, roost. It gets a lot of stuff. You can run like Sword Stance. You can also just run bulky, and because we're regular Scissor, we can be Ockerberry to take a fire type attack. We can be Life-Orb, Bandit, so you can do a lot of stuff with regular Scissor, and I'm very excited to use it. I think it's also just a good mon to pivot into Darkrai if we need to. Like if a I don't know, a bulky water or something comes in, Darkrai can beat some bulky waters, not all of them, but some of them. And pairing with with a Scissor, we wanted a bulky water for ourselves, but also a fairy type to kind of round out the start rounding out the Fairy Dragon Steel Core. And what else? Water Fairy than Taupini. So Lost. Oh, by the way, we have Wrath the Scissor. I think that's a beautiful name. So we have Lost the Taupini. Taupini is an interesting mon for me personally to draft. This is my first time drafting Taupini, like from the start of the draft. I took over a draft once that had it on it, and it was like fun to use. So now I tried it. But Taupini has always been one of those mons where in the back of my head there's like something that tells me not to draft it, because it lacks a lot of the stuff that I like my bulky water to do. Like it can't really toxic a whole lot because of the ability Misty Terrain. You don't have access to Flip Turn. You don't have any recovery besides like draining kits and leftovers, and that's not too reliable. So that's why I'm typically not a big fan of drafting Fini. Like I hate playing against Fini. I think Fini is an amazing mon. I just don't like. I can't picture myself using it, and that's why I've never drafted it before. But this time I was like, you know what? Let me just try it. Has a good utility. Like Scald is not the greatest because of Misty Terrain again, but even then it gets like knockoff. You have access to Calm Mind. You have access to Iron Defense. You can be like very bulky setup. Has a pretty good speed tier in 85. So even though with its bulk, it still outspeeds a lot of mons, which is kind of important for some in some scenarios. So overall, I'm pretty happy about picking up Taupini. Now, we had to wait like a long time because this is on the way down again. And I'm gonna be honest, I got skipped like twice. So the way this league character skips this time around is if you got skipped once, you will be skipped again on the way back if you haven't made a pick, if you hadn't made like the makeup pick in the meantime. And I think I was out of my house. I can't remember if I was asleep or if I just wasn't home during my turn. So I got skipped, and then I got skipped again. So I kind of panicked a little bit when I came home. I was like, oh shoot, I have to pick. So I just went with very generic terrain, you know, picked up Hallucia. Originally, I was thinking I wanted Mienshao for my fighting type, but I ended up picking Hallucia because I kind of like having the access to just a win con. Like Hallucia can, you know, almost any game be an automatic win con. You just have to whittle down the opposing mons enough, and then you just go +2 Sword Stance, boom, you sweep. So that's why I picked up Hallucia. It also pairs pretty decently with what we already have. Of course, the Fini, but also like just Scissor and stuff like that. Scissor really good as an ice resist for Hallucia. Later down the line, we get a couple of really good electric resist and immunity, so that's fine. Yeah, Hallucia, pretty standard. And to pair with Hallucia, I ended up picking up Electrons. And yeah, that is a really early Electrons. I'm fully aware of that. I wanted originally Thundurus, but Thundurus had been sniped. That is why I didn't have any picks to leave when I went out, because I actually didn't know what I wanted. I originally wanted Thundurus in Hallucia slot, and then I wanted Mienshao instead of like Hallucia, but Thundurus got taken, so I was like, oh shoot, what now? What? So I looked at what was like available for electric types, and almost all of the fast ones were taken. And I think like the only fast ones that were like left, of course, are what all the low tiers. It's like Jolteon and Raichu and whatnot. So I opted just going for like a bulky electric because we kind of needed a little bit of a flying resist with our steel type and scissor not resisting flying. And we now had Hallucia, which is weak to flying and weak to electric, and Electros actually very much pairs up very well with that, having the bulky electric. It has a wide range of moves, like it gets Giga Drain, Flamethrower, Play Rough, Knock Off, U-Turn, of course electric moves, Aqua Tail, like Roar, Toxic, Thunder Wave. Like this thing can do so much and is so annoying to play against. Just being standard leftovers or AV or even heavy duty boost in some situation, this one is just overall really, really good. And again, we now had to wait a little bit, and I knew I wanted to start building a little bit of our bulk core, like some defense and stuff. We have really good offense so far in Darkrai, Scizor, Hallucia, just straight up offense. Feeny can be offense with setup. Even Electros can hit fairly decently hard. So I wanted some like clear bulk so we can take some hits. And what else can do that besides Ducky the Porygon? By the way, I am completely skipping all these names. Hallucia is Envy from 7 Deadly Sins, and Electros is the first non-7 Deadly Sins name in El Noodle, and Ducky is the second in Porygon 2. So yeah, P2, I love me some P2. It's just such a good, it's a really good ghost, ghost immunity, of course. It is another fighting weakness together with Darkrai, but with Tapu Fini, I'm not too worried about it, and our Steel type isn't weak to fighting, so I think we're kind of decently balanced out there. We have access to teleport, which is like negative momentum, because so we can take a hit and then teleport out and go into one of our breakers. This thing gets a really good move pool as well, has really good utility too. Plus, our team actually does end up having a trick room element, which is very nice, with P2 being a trick room setter. Like a teleport that works very well. I don't think we're super weak to knock off. Like we're not great against it, but we're not weak to it either. So I'm not too scared about running Eviolite P2. And even without the Eviolite, P2 is still decently bulky, but of course we want to keep it. So yeah, overall pretty happy about keeping the P2. Not getting the P2 because it's just one of my favorite normal types. And the next one is probably the biggest surprise for me personally why I ended up picking it. Galarian Sloth, the Galarian Slowbro. Originally I wanted Galarian Slowking. So I wanted to pick like Darkrai and then Scizor Slowking in as like the package, but Galarian Slowking got picked up in second round. So I was like, oh, okay, that was a little bit early, but I understand because it's such a good mon. So down the line, I ended up picking. I didn't originally think I was gonna pick up Slowbro as like the replacement, but it just ended up happening like that. We were missing a psychic typing. We were missing, of course, the poison type. It can do a lot of the stuff offensively that Galarian Slowking can do, but it unfortunately does lack the special Spadef bulk that the Glowking has. Its physical bulk is like semi-decent, so you can go against a lot of fighting types and whatnot. But it is more of an offensive slow variant of Glowking than it is like a Bulkmon, which is unfortunate. I do think Glowking would have been better on this team. Also, point-wise, it of course wouldn't have gone up, but I feel like in general it would have been better. This can be like a trick room sweeper with P2. It does get access to Nasty Plot. It has a really good move pool against Flamethrower, Scald, and all stuff like that. It's a good fairy killer because it's a poison type that's not weak to psychic, and with a lot of fairy types having access to psychic moves, it is pretty nice. It can be a good AV user. It does have access to Regenerator. We can use the quick draw ability if we really want, but I'm probably gonna run Regenerator for the most part. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, I picked up Galarian Slowbro. I'm actually very excited about using this. I don't know why. It's one of those mons where when you pick it up, you're like, you know what? I think I can do something with this. And continuing building on our bulk core, I picked up Palestine, Castle Black, the Palestine. So this pairs very well with Feeny and P2, being a fighting immunity for P2, being a Feeny being a water resist for Palestine, and Palestine just in general being a really good defensive check to a lot of stuff. Like it can check other ground types because it does have access to Giga Drain. It can, it has reliable recovery and like show up. It's our first Stealth Rock setter, which, by the way, this team's biggest weakness is by far hazards. Overall, I really like Palosand. I think out of the entire like group of ground types that typically are hovering around the like 7-point area, so like Mudsteel, Palosand, Runaregis, Sandaconda, stuff like that, I think I think Palestine is probably my favorite out of those. The ghost typing is sometimes good, sometimes bad. I think on this team it does, because we have good ghost and dark counters, we can kind of live with having the ghost type on our ground type. It's not that important. So overall, I'm pretty happy about Palestine. It's gonna be a stealth rock like 99% of the time. I might even sometimes bring it just to have rocks, but yeah. Palestine, really good low tier ground type, and I really like it. Now, next up is our dragon type, and when you have Taupini, you really have to think about what dragon type you want, because you can't just spam dragon type moves. So you want a dragon type that can kind of utilize the other stab it potentially have, or at least isn't reliant on dragon. So like Curum is pretty good typically, because it has access to stab ice moves. Zygarde is pretty good because it's mostly just going to be 1,000 arrows spamming bot. Garchomp is decent because Garchomp is more reliant on his ground stab than it is a dragon stab, but it is a little bit reliant on dragon stab. But I actually ended up picking Mega Sceptile. Greed the Mega Sceptile. So this is very interesting. I think this can get away with not running dragon stab a whole lot. It does have access to a lot of like grass moves. Its physical move pool is unfortunately way better than its special move pool. If it had the special move pool that its physical move pool is, oh my god, this mon would be so much higher. It would be so much higher tiered. We got it for 9 points, and 9 points is fine. I feel like that's fine for Mega Sceptile. 145 speed, 145 special attack. This is our fastest teammate outside of Unburden Hallucia, and this means we can outspeed like Dragapult, Zero, or stuff like that. And that was actually kind of important to me, because not being able to outspeed those mons is typically a very annoying thing, and our team doesn't have the greatest choice scarf options, so having this naturally outspeed all of those mons is just nice. Of course, we have a Lucha that can outspeed them with the Unburden, but I feel like just having the generic mon to outspeed is also very nice. Access to Sword Stance, so even though its physical attack at 110 is lower than its 145 special attack, it can still be a physical sweeper if we needed to. It's I didn't feel like I really needed the bulky grass type to counter grounds. We do have Electros, which is above the ground. We have Palestine, which, as I mentioned, can beat other ground types, and even Porygon 2, because to some extent beat ground types. So I'm not too worried about it. I think it's gonna be fine. I'm very excited. Like this and Galarian Slowbro are probably the two mons I'm most excited about using, just because they're so out there and wild for me personally. So it's gonna be very, very interesting. But yeah, Mega Sceptile, pretty excited about using this. And then next up, I ended up picking a mon mostly because we needed to patch some speed tiers. So if you look at our speed tiers right now, I know you can't really see it, but we actually have a massive gap from Hallucia down to Taupini. And even then, Hallucia is going to be unburdened most of the time, so that doesn't even really count. So we actually have a gap kind of from Darkrai down to Taupini, which is unbelievably bad. We do not want that. There are so many mons in that speed tier that can just abuse it completely. So I ended up picking up DDL Fox, Kitsune the DDL Fox. So I picked DDL Fox over like Regirock. I was looking at Regirock to get a secondary Stealth Rocker, plus it would be like another flying resist, and I kind of did want the flying resist now that we picked up Sceptile, because only having Electros is a little bit iffy, because sometimes you want Electros to counter other mons. So I run the Regirock, but I ended up going with DDL Fox because I felt like patching the speed tiers was a little bit more important than having the flying resist. And also having the fire type to break down, steel types is actually not that bad, because typically Hallucia doesn't come in that often in a match. It comes in towards the end to sweep, so breaking down steel type can be kind of difficult for this team. Picking up DDL Fox definitely helps with that. If we're going up against someone that has a really, really good steel type, like a Corviknight or something like that, I probably actually would bring DDL Fox to that match, just so I can deal with the steel type way better. Overall, I am also personally a really big fan of DDL Fox. I think it's a kind of an underrated mon. We got it for 7 points, and 7 points I think is really good worth. Like, it has a good speed tier, good special attack, it can set up with Calm Mind. It is also our first Wish Passer, I think. So, you know, Wish Passing DDL Fox, yeah! No, that's of course not why I drafted it, but overall, I think DDL Fox is a really good pickup for 7 points. And as you can see, we have 1 point left, so I just ended up picking a 1 point mine at the end, and we picked up Mawile, just regular Mawile. Like, having the Intimidate can be pretty good. It is the Flying Resist, as I just talked about, which is very nice. It's a secondary fairy type, though I don't really plan on using this that much. It might come to 1 or 2 games, because I do think for a 1-point mon, this is probably one of the better you can get for like utility and whatnot. But overall, I do think this is just like, I picked it up because I had 1 point left. I might as well use it. It's gonna be named Gluttony because, you know, big mouth and all that. So yeah, that's gonna be our team for the 6th season of the NPBA. I really do hope we can do better this season than we have done the last 2 seasons. I do think we have a better team than we did last season, but it's weird, right? Because it had elements of hyper speed with like Sceptile, Hallucia, Darkrai, which are all really fast. And then we have Trick Room with P2, Bro, Scissor to some extent, Morwile with like Sheer Force, Life Orb, can be pretty decent. So overall, we do have different components we can play on, which does make it so our opponent has to really be on their toes to figure out what we're gonna do, and it also gives me more options in building. I think we have a good defensive core. I do think there are some mons I could potentially replace over time if I don't feel like they're performing. There are some mons I'm just very excited to try. But yeah, as always, if you like the video, make sure to leave a like on the video, leave a comment down below what you think of this team, and subscribe to the channel for future videos. And with that, I'm out. Peace, YouTube.